a Sudan affairs analyst and a human rights advocate. Thank you for being with me on the program. So one of the most harrowing statements that I recently heard on the conflict in Sudan was the one that was made at the UN on women having to commit suicide to avoid being sexually abused. And despite these statements that we're hearing, not only about women, little is being done to stop the violence.
Correct. However, what we saw in the UN, we have to be very objective about it. The UK has a role in its war with Sudan, and so does Russia. The Russians are essentially floating their currency using Sudanese gold, and what happened in the UN with the Russian veto, the resolution did not mention the UAE's backing of the rapid support forces, nor did the resolution have enough condemnation of the rapid support forces. So it seemed as if the resolution would only focus on one set of parts, a particular party, and not on the other that we've seen for the past 684 days about of the amount of damage, and we're talking about the RSF. Yes, we've heard horrible accounts, and I'm sure some of you may have seen it on the timelines on your social medias last week or 2 weeks ago over the horrors that was happening in Al Jazeera state, especially with women drowning themselves to avoid being raped. And over 500 civilians have been killed. The numbers are still rising because they're still finding more bodies. However, what happened in the UN, as much as these countries may act as if they are doing things for the betterment of Sudan, both sides, so Eastern Bloc, Western Bloc, seem to have a role in this Sudanese war.
We've been reporting that today's World Children's Day, and it's the minors who suffer the most in these wars. What's the impact on children been like in Sudan?
Well, it's been 15 million children have been out of education since the start of the war. That's almost 2 years of stunted educational growth. That education should be a ladder for children to get out of the circumstances that they're in. But now they don't have that chance. The Sudanese government have recently come out and announced that they will begin examinations within December. And then another round earlier next year to allow young people, children, to be able to get those qualifications to go forward with their lives without having them to be stopped all the time. But that's just on the educational side. We've heard reports on how children are used as soldiers, child soldiers, and the way that young girls are essentially kidnapped and go into sex trafficking by support forces, and young boys and kidnapped or forced to join different militias such as the rapid support forces, or even join the national army because they feel a sense, either they feel a sense of needing to defend their families and friends, which should be
Elbashir, I just want to ask this question because it's an important one. What about the prospects for peace? I mean, where's the political will to stop the bloodshed, and what role should the international community be playing?
Well, the international community first should be very honest with itself, and everybody should show each other their cards to say why they have an interest in Sudan, and without Sudan having to fall under the influence of a foreign nation. The Sudanese people in 2018 launched a revolution so they can get sovereignty and control back of their own country from military dictatorship. These military dictators were sponsored and pushed forward by the international community. Clearly, because they stayed for 30 years. But to move forward, it's quite clear that the Sudanese people all across the board, they believe that the RSF cannot be reasoned with. And I am of that opinion as well. With what we've seen for the past 584 days, it's very difficult to reason with people and a militia that seems to cause ethnic cleansing and genocide of African tribes and other ethnicities within Sudan, when Sudan is a tapestry made up of many different ethnicities and backgrounds. And this ethnic supremacy, well, if we want to go forward, somebody has to, or at least a certain side has to say to itself, we need to stop this supremacy. We need to stop these attacks on innocents.
Mm-hmm.
And Sudanese people, I don't believe, would sit